Yeah, I was telling Tam, I think we're down to, I think I got 2 more weeks in the book of James, and then we're going to be launching kind of a new study. And I'm looking forward to what that's going to be, I think. And so we'll see what's going on. So just to remind us of the book of James and the whole deal of what it's about, it really is about God reminding us that this faith is meant to be lived out, right? That's the whole point. This is what he's saying. It's you can see it all the way through there. We've called it living out loud because that's kind of what it is, right? What we know on the inside, we actually have to walk it out, and that's the important thing, right? That we walk out this truth of ours, and so that's kind of at the core of it. And he's very practical in the pieces of this, but we also call it just squeezing hypocrisy out of us. And no better truth that we're going to hear about that than today as we look at the tongue for like now the fifth time in this book. I think that means that the Lord's got something specific for anyone who takes the endeavor to read through the book of James. That's what you're going to come up with. And so as we journey through the book, we've already seen all of these things. And I'm just going to hit the highlights of it, right? But we know that hypocrisy happens in those areas of trials, right? We tend to begin to panic. And he says, but you know something, right? So listen, don't freak out about these trials. Let's just bear up underneath it, knowing God has a purpose for these things, right? We saw that. And then he talked about temptation. Hey, don't act like the world, like you didn't have a choice. You have a choice. Here's how sin happens. And so we saw him as he worked through that. He worked in about listening and doing, and that was the first spot, I guess, really where we began to look at the tongue and some of those things. You see where, yeah, it was James 1:26. If anyone condemns, no, talking about learning, listening, and doing, and be quick to hear, slow to speak, and all of those things. He talks about us being able to bridle the tongue, right? If anyone considers himself religious and yet does not keep a rein on his tongue, he deceives himself. Then we talk about favoritism and how you and me don't get the privilege of doing that. We're going to treat everybody just like Christ did. The ground is level at the foot of the cross, so it's true for you and me too. I'm not going to treat anybody differently. Wherever I go, and whoever is in front of me, I'm going to treat them just like I would everybody. This is what he's calling us to. These are the truths that we find in here. He talked about faith and deeds. You can't just say you have a faith. You have to live it out loud. There has to be works that go with it and speak about that. Then we got to chapter 3, and he again hits us with the concept of the tongue, and he did a whole chapter almost on it. Then he reminded us of wisdom. Hey man, it's easy to fall into the trap of earthly wisdom. He said, I want you to stop that. That's not who we are. That stuff's that's evil. It's not from him. And he explained what that was like. Then we talked about the adversity of life and submitting ourselves to God. He talked about submission and what that looks like. We talked about self-confidence and not putting your confidence in yourself and say, well, today this is going to happen and tomorrow I'm going to do this, but only if the Lord wills do we do that. Then he talked about wealth and it is the evil people who have wealth and they try to slam people with it, and that's not to be us. And then we talked about patience under suffering. And so that was the last section we looked at. And then he comes to verse 12. And so this is where we find ourselves today, talking about the tongue. And he says this. Let me get back to it. 5:12. He says, above all, my brothers and sisters, above all, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or by any other oath, but let your yes be yes and let your no be no. Now we're going to kind of break that down and see it, but what was going on was that people, in order to get other people to believe that they were speaking truth, this is how the world had gotten. They would say, "Well, you swear to God," right? I mean, and we hear that all the time. You swear to God, or on my mama's grave, right? When I was growing up, we had a little saying. Cross your heart, hope to die, stick a needle in my eye. Did y'all ever say those things, right? That was a way to say, no, we really mean it this time, right? And so all of those things, the whole world is used to that, right? And so it's the whole point is to manipulate the truth by making it appear it's so. And he's saying, listen, don't do that. Now in Jesus' day, they were doing that, and they were careful not to. They were making pledges and promises to other things so that they could still, they didn't swear to God. They didn't break the vow that Numbers 11 speaks about. They didn't do those things. And so they were good. They didn't sin in this lie that was taking place. And so you see that this was this whole thing going on, just manipulating truth to hide the lies. It's like your fingers crossed behind your back, right? It's that whole concept. And this is what he's speaking of here. He goes, hey, listen, above all else, should not happen with you and me as believers in Christ. We have to be people of truth. And so, if there's ever a timely time to talk about this stuff, it's now. I mean, it's gotten crazy out there. Our governmental system that was a democracy, a republic that kind of wanted to be a democracy, has morphed into really more of a totalitarianism type environment, right? I don't know if you keep up with politics and all that, but what we are under now is a totalitarian regime. It doesn't matter whether it's right or left. That's what it is. And totalitarianism, kind of the rule of that, and what makes that true is that you have to submit yourselves to whatever the government says is right. That's exactly what totalitarianism is. So you have to believe the lie. You have to submit to the lie. And so this is kind of what we find ourselves here in this whole concept. It's just that we do that. Truth becomes irrelevant, and have we figured that out yet here in our world? I mean, it's like insane that people are just saying things, and we're supposed to be okay with that. And I don't like to delve into politics. I do love to delve into truth. And so when we talk about gender, and you see what is taking place in the world, look, I get it. The world's crazy, and they're going to believe what they want to believe. But I'm not obligated to participate in the lie, right? That's the thing. So I think this truth matters in that sense. If ever there's a need for somebody to consistently speak truth without bending it, without having to go, I swear to whatever, it's you and me. There aren't versions of truth. I know we know all this. I know I sound like your grandfather who's telling you all the same stuff you've heard over and over, but there isn't. There's not a version of truth. We know what truth is. There is light, and we do have it. And so we ought to be people who speak it, and we ought to mean what we say. The whole world is untrusting, right? I mean, everybody's fact-checking everybody because nobody believes anybody. And you can't even believe the fact-checkers, and you can't even believe what you're seeing now because of AI and the fact that they can make lips move and say things that you didn't even say. I mean, it's gotten absolutely bizarre. You can't. There's very few people you can trust. I mean, listen. I mean, even the sciences. We can make science what we want it to be, right? I'm not ranting here. I just think it's important that we see that it is everywhere, right? We can talk about climate change all we want to and the veracity of it and all of that. I'm just telling you, we're not being told the truth there. We can talk about what's good for you and what you ought to eat, and we're not being told the truth there. You can go see your doctor, and you won't necessarily get the truth. And I'm not putting evil on any of these people. I'm simply saying everybody's parroting something, and most of it has little to do with the truth. And if we're honest, the only people who know the truth on this planet are those of us who are believers in Christ. That's it. Jesus said, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. He reminds us that we're to be people of the truth. This is who we are. And so we do that. And in fact, the man, right after the church was birthed, you had a husband and a wife decided to kind of fudge the truth a little bit and say, no, we gave everything. And they both perished. Remember that? Ananias and Sapphira? I mean, that's the deal of what's going on. And so, now, but here's the skinny. We all know that we're prone to lie, right? We would never say we're liars. But we do embellish the truth a little bit for story's sake sometimes, right? And for other reasons. When my kids were growing up, they would always look at mom and say, Dad, tell them the truth or not, right? Because, sometimes you just goof around, right? And then I used to get the habit of saying, hey, listen, if I'm behind the pulpit, when we had a pulpit, I said, you can trust me there, but I'm not guaranteeing anything, jokingly, outside, right? But we know that we're that way. Nobody had to teach us that. We started off liars. It was the first sin, ultimately. It was Satan deceiving and spinning a lie that got Adam and Eve in the trouble that they did. And then we inherited that nature. I've never had to teach any of my kids how to lie. Never did I say, hey, today I want to teach you how to do that. They pretty much figured that out all on their own. Right? I did the same thing. I mean, it was easy, man, when my little brother came along. When my sister she's the oldest, and she was Miss Perfect, and I wasn't. And so if I ever said, no, she did it, my mom knew that I was lying. But when my little brother came along, it kind of evened the deal, and I could kind of throw stuff his way, right? We would all do that. I didn't do it. It wasn't me, right? All of those things. But we have to get to this place where we are people of inherent truth, right? Lies, when told, prevent intimacy from happening. And I don't mean intimacy like in a marriage intimacy. I mean, if we can't be real with each other, we can't have relationship. One of the habits that I'm instilling habits in our company as part of my role as a chief culture officer. And one of the habits that we have is this idea of just being real, like being transparent. If we can't do that, if you're afraid to tell me the truth, or I'm afraid to tell you, like something broke and you don't want to get blamed for it or whatever's going on, we just have to be people of truth, because you can't have intimate relationships, which are the only healthy relationships are, unless you can tell the truth. Transparency has to happen in order, and I know that when we start a relationship, there's that testing the waters. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and see whether if you freaked out, and if you didn't, and I may tell you a little more, right? But that's how it works, because we want to get to the place where we're known, to know and to be known. This is where we want to go, and so for friendships to happen, that's going to be it. I know I was smart enough when I was learning how to be a parent. That I had that figured out. I would tell my kids, if you lie to me, it's worse than anything else that you could do. Because if you'll lie to me, then you'll steal from me. If you'll steal from me, you'll kill from me. And so we're not going to allow lying to take place. And so that's why we come here to this passage. It'll be a quick deal because it's just a short section. Above all else, listen, of all the weighty things that he said we ought to do to get rid of the hypocrisy, it's this one thing. Be people that have a testimony of being truthful people. This is what he says. But above all else, right? He said, my brothers and sisters, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or by any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no, no, so you don't fall under judgment. What's he saying? It's just simply plain. Let's just be people who speak truth, and we're known for that. And so this is what we come to. Listen, so when you make an oath, it's a vow, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. If you were to go to Hebrews 6, you'll see where God, because he had no one else that he could swear to, swore on oath to himself, right? And so we know that that's a piece of it. Numbers 11 talked about how you do that thing. There was a Nazirite vow. Men would make vows, and those things would happen. We do it in weddings, right? Before God and these witnesses to today. That's a vow, right? Now, it's obvious that it doesn't mean much. Till death do his part is what we vow. We should probably take that out if we don't mean it. That hey, I pledge to love you with all my heart until I don't. I mean, maybe that's the better vow, because if you don't mean it, then don't say it. Because this is what holds us accountable to things. We do it in the court, right? We put our hand on a Bible or whatever it is. I don't know if they still use a Bible or not, but when what you see on TV is always that, right? And you would swear. Politicians do it to uphold the Constitution. We know that's not happening either today. But yet those are the things that go on. We get to Matthew chapter 12, and this is one of the most sobering passages of Scriptures. I'm just going to read it to you. If you want to turn there, that's cool. But Matthew 12, if I got it, I think I did. But I tell you, this is Jesus speaking. He says, but I tell you that for every careless word that people speak, they will give an account of it on the day of judgment. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. It's a big deal. Our words last through eternity. Those things spoken, they last all the way through. We have a tendency, I know, to lie to cover up ourselves, right? We do it for pride. We do it for power. But here's the thing. When the reason we lie right? Let's just talk about what the reason that we lie for. It's because I'm trying to protect myself, either from harm. It's either going to be pride or power. So we lie for those things. But listen, as we die to self, we realize there's no need for that. I can just be truthful. And this is the whole point. The only way to be truthful is to actually demonstrate this whole thing. Die to self, be absorbed up into this living out what we know. When we start living the truth, the lie goes away. And so I'm going to leave us with three sections of scriptures, and then we really are going to be kind of done. It is a short deal because it was one of those verses you couldn't work on last week, and then it's a separate deal next week, and so it's just this. But let me just read these passages to us, just to, again, set this perspective. Psalm 15 said, Lord, who may reside in your tent? Who may settle on your holy hill? Who can be close to you is basically what he's saying. One who walks with integrity, practices righteousness, and speaks truth in his heart. He does not slander with his tongue, nor do evil to his neighbor, nor bring shame on his friend. A despicable person is despised in the eyes, but he honors those who fear the Lord. He takes an oath to his own detriment and does not change. What's he saying there, man? He's saying, hey, listen, lying, you want to know who can ascend to the Lord? You got to be truth in the heart, and you're not going to slander with your tongue. And then we get to Proverbs 6. We looked at this several times. There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 which are an abomination to him. A haughty eye, a lying tongue, that's the second one. Hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that run rapidly to evil, a false witness, that's the second time he speaks of something about our mouth, a false witness who declares lies, and one who spreads strife among brothers. Out of those 6, 7 things, 3 of them have to do with the tongue. It's a big deal. That's why he says, therefore, above all, let's do this, right? Then we come to the last book of the scriptures, Revelation 21. It says this. This is one of those crazy lists, and you go, man, that's right in there? But for the cowardly, the unbelieving, abominable, murderers, sexually immoral persons, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars. It's crazy how he adds that all to that, isn't it? And all liars. I'm going to read it again. Right? But for the cowardly and unbelieving and abominable and murderers and sexually immoral persons and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars, their part will be in the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. He's saying, listen, if the inherent aspect of your life is you are a liar. Now, there's a difference between one who lies and one who's a liar. Right? So we are not sinners. We talked about this years ago. We're not sinners. We're saints. You never find believers called sinners. We're saints. We're saints, and we may sin, but it's not the character of our life. It's not the habit of our life that we sin. No one who's born of God practices sin. They cannot, for God's seed is in them. So we're not liars as a habitual aspect. We're just people who occasionally lie, which we shouldn't, but that's where we are. So it's important to distinguish the difference of that. But we come back to this, and it's just one of those things. Listen, it's going to be such that truth is going to be a standard by which, if you don't believe the lies of our government, you're going to be persecuted. It's just going to happen. It's just going to happen. They're going to outlaw Scripture. They're going to outlaw. These are things that are coming, right? We know that. We see it in the book. We just know that's what's happening. You and me have to be the people that are consistently the ones who just speak the truth. It's like Martin Luther when they asked him to recant, here I stand, I can do no other. I just can't. I can't lie. When they asked him to forsake their God, how can I forsake the one who died for me? Right? I can't do that. And so this is who we have to be. We have to get to this place where we are just people who go, I'm going to speak the truth. Not my version of it. I'm going to speak truth. And this is a powerful message that we ought to look at and be careful about. Let's just live our lives in that way. Let's sing our way out of here with this song.